Well, hello, this is the final boss, and this is To All Things Their Season, Book 1 Restored, Chapter 1, called Home. And if I look like I am coated in blankets, it is because I am, because it's really cold in my garage. And I've been banished out here. Actually, I haven't been banished. This is where all my stuff is. So, anyways, enough being goofy aside, let's jump in and take a look at this project. This is the first chapter of a novel by one of our viewers. I'm really excited to take a look. I probably will not be able to go through the whole thing because this is all single spaced, and I want to make sure that I am fair to the other writers that submit. So I always kind of standard format, 12 point, double spacing, and then we're gonna go ahead and accept all these changes because for some reason I was a goose and I put on track changes. And I did take my trash out, so I don't have to mess with that. Boop. Okay, so try to get through 5, 6 pages. We'll see how that goes. Depends on how many edits there needs be. But I'm excited to take a look at this project, um, and see, yeah, some things that hopefully we can help the writer on. So let's jump on in. The narrow path. So remember, first sentences, most important sentence in your entire novel. Because if they don't get past that, if readers don't get past it, they won't get past. They won't see all the other great stuff you've written. So we'll zoom in pretty tight on the first paragraph, but then zoom out and hopefully get more thematic feedback later. The narrow path between trees seemed to be leading her somewhere, and she couldn't help the foreboding feeling of what she would find when she got there. So overall, I think a good start, right? Like this has an interesting concept. The thing that I would think about whenever you find yourself describing a feeling, and this is where obviously as a writer you have to decide where you want to show and where you want to tell. Um, but these these types of signals, for example, can be done a few different ways that can be a little bit more evocative to the reader, right? So instead of helping the foreboding feeding of what you find, you can just ask the question, what would she find when she got there? Or you could say her, stomach fluttered, that's it, something like that. So a lot of this is if you tell me it's a foreboding feeling, it'll generally feel like we're moving in summary, right? Where we're zooming pretty fast. But the fact that I see dialogue down here means that might not be your goal, right? Because anytime you're distilling and you're saying, okay, she had a foreboding feeling, that's kind of like you're taking all the sensory stimulus that character is experiencing, right? Because when you're a human having a foreboding feeling, your heart's pumping, you're glancing around a lot faster, maybe there's some sweat on your forehead. So whenever you're distilling that into just a feeling, you're automatically implying all those evocative sensory inputs that get us to foreboding, which you doesn't seem like you want to do because we have dialogue coming soon after. So I would avoid some. And you're asking questions. What am I going to find up here? What's going to happen? You know, so that type of stream of consciousness flow, it's okay to give us access to that, especially in the beginning when you're evoking a scene and really bringing us into it. And yeah, maybe later if you're just zooming through something and you want to accelerate the writing a little bit and accelerate the pace, yeah, you can summarize. Be like, oh, Jeff was really stressed out the whole weekend. Boom, it's a whole weekend summarized, and the reader can get back to the next scene. But in this instance, I do think that expanding this out, thinking of ways to evoke a feeling of foreboding might really help that first sentence in that first paragraph, hit even better as it goes forward. Trunks were knotted and twisted and almost in an unnatural way. So almost qualifiers like this usually don't need. Um, were knotted and twisted unnaturally. So again, like in an almost like to some degree, if it's being observed by because one of the tricky things about third person is that there's a narrator, like the person telling the story about the character on the screen, and there's the on-screen characters or on-page characters' experience of that story. But in both, no matter where the sentence is really coming from, whether it's from that, like in an almost unnatural way, um, two things. It kind of slows down the tension that it looks like you're trying to build up with these words like foreboding and stuff like that. But then it also undermines like the reality of what we're being shown here. So you don't have to necessarily worry as much about qualifying on like in an almost like it's just unnatural. Like if they're observing it as unnatural, it's okay to let it stand just like that. And a glinting silver mist covered the carved out path. What the heck am I doing here? The young woman asked. The whispering night air, not quite sure where here was. Something's not right. This is probably a nitpick, so I think this is more optional. I would just cut because we're already. Well, I guess we don't know exactly. Um, yeah, I don't know. Elve Cord. She saw the shadowed figure of her brother at the far side of the large clearing. What is this? I'm sorry. His voice choked. I'm so sorry. There was nothing I could do. I'm sorry. What happened? She. So again, we're missing a few just kind of you know, quotation tags. And what's nice a lot in modern writing, you can cut out a lot of dialogue tags if as long as it's clear who's speaking. She ran. She ran to his voice because I don't think she really sees him, does he? I don't know. Maybe that's optional, right? Cord, what happened? What happened? She ran. I don't even know if because we already have what happened later, so you might be able to save yourself a little bit of extra oops stuff there too. So she ran to his voice. Cord, what happened? It's gay. He looked grim and sounded worse. She ordered me not to tell you till it was over. Alvina Karis's eyes snapped open as she bolted up in bed with enough force to disturb the hound asleep at the foot of her bed, who began snarling, looking around for an intruder in the dark room. Okay, this is a nice that we're jumping out of the dream. I think this is a kind of a cool foreboding dream because of it sounds like I'm getting a sense that your goal is to kind of have this ethereal feel. So I would lean into more experiential stuff, like stuff that's coming in through the things we experience, our senses, our stream of consciousness thoughts, what we feel, our body's reactions, sweat, those types of things. I do like this here. Um, I don't necessarily know if you need to give us her full name immediately, and this is something I do. I have a challenge with in my writing is I always just want to like load. Okay, this is Steve Steverson, like age 27, blah 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 blah, and just get it out of the way. But um, you know, you've done such a good job of evoking this really mysterious scene that we're waking out of, and we know this is not just a normal dream. I would just cut straight in here. Elvina bolted up in bed with enough force to disturb. And so again, like if this is coming in from her perspective, we could, name the dog even. Rihanna. Whatever. And then it's sometimes a little easier to chop these sentences down. And because like she's talking here, it's worth it maybe to have a new paragraph. Rena quit. Liviana grabbed the messenger. Don't necessarily grab the messenger paper at its customary place by the hearth. She didn't want to be right, but the whole reason. So again, I don't really understand why after waking up from this horrible dream and kind of calming her dog down, she grabs a paper. Um, this, is interesting. Why is she versus something, to calm the dog or, to kind of calm herself after a weird dream. Yeah, she didn't want to be right, but her reason. My headphones like to turn off randomly. I apologize for that. She didn't want to be right, but her reason was wide awake from what she'd just seen. Eh, Her reason was wide awake from what she'd just seen, all but confirmed it. This one might just need another look at the grammar. Yeah, that feels like it just needs just a little quick editing pass. She wouldn't believe it until she had it confirmed. Against her will, she stoked the fire and began to write, "Hey, it's me. Please tell me everything's rushed, clear enough to read." She asked for chords, added chords mark in the corner, and threw it into the hearth. She didn't need to wait long for the response to reappear in a trail of smoke placed by the hearth. Okay, I like this. I really like this magic. I like this magical element and how it's treated as everyday by these characters. This fits great into the world and starts seamlessly establishing, you know, world building and lore. Great job. Great. Good. Good. Yes. Will you kindly drop the cryptic? What the heck happened? I'm so sorry, El. Your grand's gone. She died half an hour ago. Just talked to her a few days ago, as was her custom in close exchanges. So again, so a lot of this stuff feels a little bit like verbal doubling, right? So when she's saying, no, no, I just talked to her, she's implying that chord is mistaken, right? So by restating this at the end, probably, this might be verbal doubling. Can, use, the above to communicate the same thing. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you have verbal doubling and stuff like this, but as a writer, it's always good to ask that question. Hey, can I take what I already have and communicate the same thing with less? Can I communicate the same thing with less? Because more efficient communication is just going to engage. It's going to be more engaging. It's going to have a better pace. Um, and so it's like, hey, unless there's a reason to kind of have her reiterate something that's already kind of getting implied and pushed through, um, you might be good just moving forward with it as it is. Because trust, I mean, the dialogue is good here. I would just trust it. No, no, I just talked to her. It's also not a bad idea to be more specific. You can do. and this will also be able to add more, lore. Let's say it's on, Woden's Day, whatever, for fake Wednesday, the old version of Wednesday. So, and also this as was her custom. Trying to deny the words more. Like spoke while writing. Uh, yeah, I think that's okay to have her speaking while writing, but I don't know if we need this backstory about her custom and close exchanges, because um, I think it's kind of implied. Like if you're writing to your grandma or to some relative, um, that's a little bit implied, and then it's also, even if it wasn't and we weren't sure, it probably now wouldn't be the time for her to think of that, right? Like if let's say somebody, a relative, something happens, a relative, gets sick or passes away, like the first thing that comes to mind, when that's happened, to me is usually it's like, oh, whoa, like that's, one really really sad, but I'm not generally thinking about, oh, I correspond with them all the time. So those types of thoughts to give information will sometimes ring as false, because if we were in a similar situation as a reader, we would say, well, I'd probably be just like, what happened? Did somebody, come break in the house? Like, what went wrong? And so that does ring a little bit less effective than some of the other dialogue here. I found her. Those words are as firm as I found her. Those were as firm as is typically such a handwriting can make it. I just finished setting the morning elements. I laced posy oils with the candles and draped the veil. Listen to me. You know what's at stake. Her writing became more frantic, lettering to only someone as Cord could make out. In no circumstances, old Demia will have to see you soon. Sent the word to Clagio already. Everything will be safe until the release ceremony. I like this idea. I think this is like a cool concept. But remember, end them with periods. In those sentences with periods, just try to, like, the more those little grammar things, because as weird as it sounds, those little kind of things can add up, right? And they can slow a reader down, or they'll, even those like little subconscious, like, oh wait, what, that actually makes it sounds silly, but it is kind of like the not straw. Maybe it's a straw that breaks the camel's back, but it's like adding a straw onto the camel's back, right? And for some readers, those little things can accumulate and get and really slow down someone's experience of the story. But I really like this concept. This is super cool concept, and I like that it adds stakes that are bigger than life and death, right? Because essentially we're saying, oh, hey, this person passed away, but holy moly, make sure someone's in the room with her at all times, with her corpse at all times, to, ensure against something. And that's like a really really great something. I think that's a cool and a thoughtful way to add some tension early on, while we as the reader are still building our kind of understanding of the world too. Cord understood the need for secret security and discretion. Wait for me to get home before any kind of decision. Sorry, I'm running around a little bit, but I need some halls because um turns out my yammery voice gets old rusty. I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab a few halls, but if anybody's on stream, feel free to share your thoughts and feedback so far. All right, I survive. And I see some folks have chatted in. That's awesome. You're getting some hauls. Don't forget your glass of prune juice, Grandpa Boss. I know, I know. Hey, you know what? You all will be joining me here soon at the sunset of life. On my last sunset, you're gonna have to be there for my release ceremony before long. Make sure that I guess my soul leaves my body expediently, which I hope it does. So, you know, I sent word to the Claggy already. In the next 3 days, she knew Cord understood the need for security and discretion. Wait for me to get home before a decision of any kind is made. I'll be on my way before first light. Depend on it, little sister. Quick notes and excuses were written, and arrangements were made for lodgings to be secured in her absence. Not an easy feat. So this is a perfect place to do summary, right? Like so, because you're just saying rather than having a dialogue about the excuses and saying, "Oh, I can't be here today. Something happened." This is the perfect place for summary. I just got here. What is this piece? The novel. So this is To All Things Their Season, Book One Restored, Chapter One, called Home. So essentially, the main character had kind of a surreal, uncanny dream where some of her family was in danger. She awoke and sent a magic message through the fire to her brother, and the brother replied that one of her, I think her grandmother actually had passed away, and they're trying to prepare for some sort of mystical release ceremony to essentially help aid her passing. So I'm kind of curious to see what comes of it. And this was by one of the viewers, which is really fun. So remember, folks, I do still do edits sometimes, even though my life has been crazy lately. I do still try to do edits. This is still the editing channel. It's not just a game testing channel or a game reviewing channel or writing channel. We still got it here. Which viewer wrote this? I actually, off the top of my head, I like know like the if the Twitch name shows up when I see it, I would be like, oh yeah, yeah, it's them. But I think it's NW. Yeah, you guys will see. You guys will see. You'll find out if they stop in. I'll leave it anonymous if they prefer. Rita trotted by the side of Ellie's sorrel mare, Dag. They left the Barnum Gulf and made out way towards the Decessa Mountains. Ellie had lucked out. So again, this term feels very modern, right? And so we haven't and this happens in some books, right? Like in Brandon Sanderson's Edge Dancer with the lift who can slide around everywhere. She will refer to herself as awesome and her awesomeness. And that's like very intentional bringing in of modern language into like this fantasy world to make it easier for us to understand. Because I haven't seen much, all the other languages in kind of a more archaic register of language. I sent word rather than I said I messaged the Calgo already, or depend on its sister. Like kind of inverting like the subject verb stuff like that. Or like I guess it's not. That's just having a direct like a imperative at the end. I'm getting old. Just halls and whatever. But this seems like a modern register of language. Yeah, and I just don't know. And it's really just up to the writer, right? Is this your goal to bring in some modern language and have it have that bit more of a casual tone, or do you want to keep it pulled out and kind of more distant? Pureback shepherd pup who was 2 years old had grown faithful into a sympathetic. So I mean, to some degree, we're already seeing this. So I do think you might be able to get away with not stopping. Because we already see we've introduced the dog. Um, Yeah, you might not need to explicitly state it because we're already kind of getting the sense that, hey, this is an awesome pet. It's, looking out for its master and so forth. What if you grabbed a THC infused Halls? You'd be living in a dream sequence yourself. I mean, I didn't even know those existed. I mean, I know they have some THC infused hard candies, but man, at my age, it's one of those things about, any sort of substance, and this is kind of depressing, I guess, being a parent. It's like everything is evaluated beneath the razor of, um, you know, will it impact my sleep? And so it's like, oh, like, whatever, physical high or whatever, like even having like more than a drink or two at dinner, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to. It'll just make me tired. It'll make me more exhausted the next day. So yeah, I've become, both because I think it's generally good for one's health, but also just because sleep has become the ultimate priority in my life. That all other recreation pales in comparison to the pure and unequivocal joy of sleeping after your child is no longer screaming. Do you want a real high? Deal with like a like a 2-year-old and then pass out. That's the most bliss you'll ever have. Backing your medium foul possessions into saddlebags and departing the boarding house an hour before dawn. The dog gave her an appraising look, but a simple melody, the small flute she carried, was enough to begin the journey. So there's like the horse, like it says. So this needs a bit more context. Is it the horse, that needs music to go, or some superstition? You know, don't need much. Just a hint in the right direction. Yeah, of why we're doing this. Yeah, I don't think you need to like spell it out. Parenting is a special kind of exhaustion. Yes, that is very true. Yeah, coffee cools. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. Yeah, there is you know. But, it gives you the kind of, these epic blisses that, no substance can give you for the low, low price of all your hopes and dreams getting just destroyed. Just kidding. No, I'm very thankful I have a little one. It's awesome. But, sleep has become the sweetest, the sweetest sugar there is in life. Good, just relaxing sleep. I've definitely become an old man when I fall asleep on the couch, like watching League of Legends YouTube videos. Yeah, it's one of my old man vices. I'll be like, oh, there's a new champ out. I want to watch. I'm gonna see their new moves or whatever. I mean, like you guys have. I think I've streamed League, and I'm horrible. I'm horrendous. There's no point for me to ever watch League. But I'll have my controller and just pass out on the couch, and that's very 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 much a factor of my current drug, which is sleep, my addiction. The road approaching the town of Palem was a simple narrow path, woodlands and fields. Sage hardly ever traveled as close. Rena, we're, we're going to be around the family. I think that's going to be like that. We're going to be around the family. And you know what happened the last time any Karens came to call? Cocked her head defensively? Like usually, so this so this is when like it's always a little bit something to be cautioned about when you're using adverbs, right? Is because sometimes if you have a verb that doesn't really mesh with the adverb, it creates kind of a conflicting image. And so for this one, for example, I would almost encourage saying, hey, what's the best word? Like Rena's like, you know, lip curled over her teeth, that can be kind of like that, like the dog's angry, but like tilted her head defensively. tilting ahead for most dogs, at least from my experience, means they're confused. So defensively doesn't really like that's not usually a sign of aggression or like being defensive or shy. So something just to be aware of there in terms of word choice. I know that I don't blame you at all for that. She gave an understanding. She gave her ununderstand. She gave ununderstanding scratch behind Reina's ears. So if you end up biting one of them again, maybe make yourself scarce and I'll deal with things that need to be done now. Grandson. So yeah, we can capitalize for a sentence. And in a way, Ellie took for agreement. So I liked it. I mean, gosh, we've all, the best movies are the ones with like a cool dog. The one sad thing is whenever I know there's like a really cool dog that can kind of understand human stuff, I know they're gonna die in the end. It's like inevitable. So I'm really sad that Reina is probably gonna die in the end. That makes me sad. But yeah, the they always kill the dog. I know it's a cruelty. It's a crime. The community dog is very very fun. A great sci-fi movie. Reference for this is Boy and His Dog. So yeah, if you want to see some of these, because whenever you're bringing in, you know, one of these kind of archetypes, right? Which is like, hey, kind of there is a special bond between people and dogs, right? And when you kind of use that in fantasy, that's something that's not that's a trodden path, right? Like people have used that archetype for millennia, and so it's always good to just brush up and sort of say, hey, what are the ways it's been used in sci-fi? What are the ways it's been used in other fantasy? And how do you want to what do you want to borrow from those things and say, hey, you know what, they did a really good job of this in XYZ book. I want to try some of those tools they use to make that effect. Or, oh, in this movie, I didn't think they had that kind of, really specially communicative dog thing set up as well. Maybe you would go in an opposite direction. Always get to do some research when you're doing when you're leveraging some of those archetypes. But it's very effective at hitting people in the feels. I know, it's so sad though. At least with the dog, there'd be plenty of good hunting in the forest surrounding. Staying by shore, tired grown tired of fish. The demands of the occasion became too much. Ollie would be just fine. So again, I'm not super sure what this is supposed to entail. In the paragraph about hunting, so so this feels like it should relate to hunting, but I don't know who Ollie is, so it feels like it's pulling me elsewhere. Yeah, so this is kind of, paragraphy is something that doesn't matter too much until you get, closer to a final draft, but it is something to think about even in your early drafts of your novels, which is really saying, how am I spacing out my communication of ideas, my pacing of information? And sometimes if you have something like this, it's almost worth it. I mean, like I'm not sure exactly what the goal is here, but depending on your goals as a writer, it's almost worth it to break something out into a new paragraph. I'm not really certain what's happening, how this relates to the hunting, or whether it relates more to something else. So I'm not going to make that change. But it is worth just saying, hey, how do I group those ideas, that pace of thought into those kind of segments of thought? And a lot of it is just even observing the way, you think throughout your day can go a long, long way towards building those muscles, right? Because so often, we do kind of think in patterns in groups, and trying to replicate that in a paragraph will make the reading even more seamless for a reader. Different matter altogether. Her status in the family had been tenuous since early childhood. She didn't remember her mother. Mm. So this is a bit heavy on the exposition. Obviously, like, I know this is an early draft, but it's always worth it to try to have, some of like I think it was supposed to be. It's by and large, I think, yeah. Holly herself would handle the disease becomes a different matter altogether. Her status in the family had been tenuous. I mean, at best is it's okay, but I don't know if it's necessary. Tenuous since early childhood, just clear, distinct fact. She didn't remember her mother. So again, so we're talking about her mom and dad, but this doesn't tell me an answer to the most recent thought, which is my status isn't clear, right? So it's a bummer that her mother died and that she's kind of been orphaned now. But why she's bringing that up, like I need to know how her mother's death lost her standing with the family in order for it to appropriately follow up talking about her tenuous status, right? So it's worth it to, connect this to her tenuous status with the family. Otherwise, it feels like info that wouldn't flow naturally here. Like maybe her mother dying, didn't set her up for the most success or whatever it may be. Those types of things are worth, unpacking here. Now that we're talking about, oh, hey, my status isn't good, and it's like, oh, my mother passed away, so she couldn't advocate me in the, status trials, whatever it may, whatever it may be. And then, her father was too busy for her older brothers. Yeah, I mean, because like to me, being raised by the matriarch, that probably would help your status. I mean, matriarch is a powerful place, right? And if you're close to that person, maybe that would improve your status. So again, just clarifying, hey, you have a lot of these good raw materials of like, hey, there's dynamics here, but just showing me how those pieces fit together a little bit more, I think we'll be able to really up, level up that kind of information passover. Ellie had left Palem and Grant's insistence and deserved the outside world had been difficult to lose a hard-won feeling of home and security. She'd come to visit a handful of times but discouraged the return, citing the unrest in the area or being adamant Kay. She needed to place herself. All right, Grant, she said, forbiddingly dark. You kept me away, but I'm back now. Whether either one of us likes it or not. So again, like, yeah, if she doesn't like it, what is her motivation for coming back? I mean, motivation is one of those things, and like, obviously there's a spectrum here. My hoodie is overheating. Oh. Oh. Yeah, but motivation is one of those things that if there is a way to communicate it early and clearly, it's worth doing, right? And so when we're getting some conflict in our motivation, though I don't really know what the motivation is right now. Is it to help her grandmother's release ceremony? Is it to protect her brother? Is it to kind of unpack some of the family issues that are going on? I mean, maybe it's a combination of all those things. But apparently she doesn't like it that she has to go there. So then the question is, if I'm not really sure why she's going, then why is she going? Like, obviously there's some obligation, but giving a little bit more hints in that direction might go a long way. Surrounding the countryside and the woodlands in the southwest of Palem hadn't changed at all. Not that she expected it to. It was a very consistent region due to the nature and necessity. Yeah, what does that mean? What does an inconsistent? Yeah, so again, in a fantasy world, when you're bringing up kind of words like consistent region, like the first question I'm going to ask is, is this unnatural for the? It's being remarked upon that like it's stayed the same. So are there areas that haven't stayed the same? Are there certain grassy fields that all of a sudden become, swamps or lava pits or whatever it may be because maybe there's some sort of deity that's shifting the land around and these types of things. So that's one of the things that I would zoom in on and say, okay, how can there get a little bit more that sharp clarity for the reader here. Marshall's outpost half an hour ride from town was the first thing she saw. What surprised me, the lone rider. You still at this, Darren? She called once out of earshot. Thought they would have at least had you patrolling the town by now. Who's that, Dan? Oh, interesting. So great description, and I like that there are rifles and guns in this world. I didn't realize that was a thing. Um, Interesting combination with some of the fantasy concepts. Cool. How's fate been treating you, Marshall? Keeping the rustlers at bay? Not that you'd know from the wage I pull each year. Don't tell me you've changed so much that you developed expensive tastes. So again, this is a bit of verbal doubling. You're doing such a good job with the dialogue. We can just by reading this know that it's sarcasm. And that she knows that he doesn't like expensive tastes. So just trust in your good dialogue. Trust in your good dialogue. The way it's written communicates, a bit of, joking and sarcasm, and we know, he doesn't have expensive tastes and probably hasn't developed them. Okay. Well, overall, I want to make sure that I have enough time before my old man sleepiness takes over to review some of the other projects. But great job on this project. I think it's a cool concept. I really like the magic system here. I'll put some of my overall notes up top here. Overall, whoopsie. Why am I bad at computers? I don't know. I'm just bad at them. Okay. So overall, great job with the world building. The idea, the magic systems coming in were cool, and as a huge fan of King's Gunslingers, I'm excited that there are firearms in this magical world, and I'm curious to see the family issues and drama unfold. Yeah. In terms of areas to improve, I'd take a grammar pass when able. but as a high priority, able, but mostly, you know, think about how you're communicating exposition and character information, and, in revisions, seek, keep finding ways to streamline that info share. But yeah, overall, great work. This is a great little story. I mean, it's interesting. There's definitely intrigue going on. Yeah, I think this is definitely, I would encourage the writer, hey, keep working on this. See what you can come up with. See how you can keep evolving this project. And I think it's a cool project for sure. And I'm excited to see, oops, how it, yeah, where you go with it next. How you keep developing it. All right, so now I have a children's book slash poem written by a colleague of, or a friend of a colleague, friend of a colleague. And I will try to get this to fit the screen. But overall, great job to the writer. Excited to see what you come up with next. Take care.